Welcome to the Water People podcast. Today, we're in conversation with the godmother of British surfing, Gwyn Haslock, who has nearly 6 decades of surfing under her belt. This season is supported by Patagonia, whose purpose-driven mission is to use business to save our home planet. We acknowledge the Bundjalung Nation, the first and ongoing custodians of the land and waters where we work and play, who have lived, worked, and cared for this sea country for tens of thousands of years. Respect and gratitude to all First Nations people who continue to practice the cultural, spiritual, and educational customs of their ancestors. Gwyn was born in Cornwall in 1945 and is renowned as one of the UK's original surfers. She holds many competitive surfing accolades, including multiple British national championship titles. I first heard about and wrote about Gwyn's story in 2015 after connecting with English bellyboarding enthusiast Sally Parkin, who at the time said, quote, "I'm not sure who you would say started men's competitive surfing, but there is no doubt in my mind that Gwyn Haslock started women's stand-up surfing in England. She entered the first ever British National Championships in 1966. She was the only female competitor, and it was because of her that the surfing organisers started a ladies' national championship in 1969. There were 6 competitors, and Gwyn won. She went on to win the first ever British Ladies Surfing Championships in 1970, 1971, 1972, 1973, and 1974, and she came second in 1975 and won again in 1976. She also won the English Surfing Championships in 1990. What incredible longevity in her competitive surfing career. This conversation with Gwyn was only possible because Sally sent me a last-minute message that she was on her way over to visit Gwyn, who is happily tech skeptical, by the way. And so Sally was able to get the digital conversation rolling. You'll hear Sally's voice pop in a couple of times. Thank you so much, Sally, for your important work in contributing to surf culture and preserving surf history through the original surfboard company and through your own storytelling. There are too many missing links in the history of surfing, so I'm always so grateful to encounter the stories of our surfing foremothers and to share them before they disappear. Our line was a little sketchy at times, but I hope you enjoy hearing from one of the great elders of surf culture, Gwyn Haslock. Oh, thank you both so much. It is such a pleasure to see you both and to get to meet you both. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, we met through the passion of bellyboarding, didn't we?
We did, yes.
Bellyboarding, surfing, that's how we met, wasn't it?
We did, yes. Quite a few years ago now, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, you know, I like stand-up surfing still, but I'm slowed up a hell of a lot because of my age.
So you're bellyboarding now more?
No, I like to take the longboard you know.
Yeah.
Anyhow, what's your question?
Yeah.
The first question is a question that we always begin with when we chat with various water people from around the world. And that question is about a time or experience after which you were never the same. Do you have a story like that you'd be willing to share with us?
Well, relating to water, I've always loved going in the sea from the age of 4. And having an older brother and my enthusiastic father, we used to go down to our local beach to swim. Then we used to go over to Newquay. And then, of course, we started the bellyboarding in the 50s. And then in the early 60s, I saw these lifeguards zooming along on their stand-up board, Malibu. We called them Malibu boards in those days, 10 foot long. And I thought, oh, I'd love to have a go at that. But my brother had a go because he was older than me. And that's how I started with the stand-up surfing in the early 60s, seeing the lifeguards. We had a very good lifeguard called Jack Lydgate from Hawaii. He was over here at a university. And he was very helpful, and also a local person called Trevor Roberts, who took me into the sea for my first time for stand-up surfing. But I've always gone back to my bellyboarding roots because to me that's still surfing, it's part of surfing. you learn the formation of waves and that sort of thing.
And what about a non-surfing story in that same vein?
Well, I was saying, I think when my father died quite young, I was 21, he was only 65. And I think you learn that you've got to take every day as it counts, really. Enjoy yourself every day.
Were you close with your father?
Yes, he was an enthusiastic sport person, but I was close to my mother, so I carried on living with my mother. We sort of supported each other, and that I never married. I carried on living with my mother, and she died about 10 years ago. She had a little bit of memory loss. That was a bit not very nice, but she always supported me although she didn't like the sea and frightened of the water, she always supported me in my surfing and activities, and also my brother. So what he did, I always sort of follow. He's 4 years older than me, and he went to Northern Ireland. He married a girl from Northern Ireland, so I went over to Ireland quite a bit, Donegal surfing, because that's where he was in the 60s.
So, Gwyn, there's a story that I've heard about you that really captured my curiosity as someone who's interested in the way that surfers, and especially female surfers, are represented in the media. And that story is about you winning a number of British surf contests. On at least one occasion, you were asked to hand your trophy over to another woman on the beach to take the media photo. Can you talk me through that experience?
I don't know if it's the trophy, but sort of surfboard, to sort of show off women. The thing is how, like you, have flowing hair and everything. You know what I mean? That's the image of what I call women surfer. But I've always had short hair because I hate my hair getting in my way. And I've always worn bathing hats, which is another symbol of me. I've always wore a bathing hat. Now I wear a helmet, because there's so many people out in the water, and it's safer, I think, to wear a helmet. I don't know why more people don't, because it's not what you do, it's what other people do. So that sort of thing happens. But this business of women against men, the men have always encouraged me. Most of the men surfers have always been very good and encouraged me. That's life, isn't it? You always get these press people want an image, don't they?
Yeah. My sort of career in surfing has been largely devoted to trying to get more women involved in film and in surf magazines, and just trying to have more women included in the representation of what it looks like to be a surfer outside of being very sexualized. And so I guess what captures my imagination about your story is that was one of the early examples of how a particular and very narrow image of what it meant to be a female surfer was sort of getting woven into the media.
Yes, I mean, in the early days, obviously, the men got more sponsorship. I've never really had a proper sponsorship, not that I wanted it, because I feel you got to be doing what that sponsorship wants. So I've always been what I call pure amateur. But luckily, I think it came more, when I was sort of semi-half retired, I think the women then were getting more professional. Linda Sharp from Wales was one of the people that pushed women surfing, and I think she was really the first person to sort of make it more professional, if you see what I mean, which is good. I mean, there's a lot of women now surfing on the beaches. If you go down, there's a lot of ladies surfing, which is good to see.
You mentioned that you were the first British ladies surf champion.
Yes.
What were those early contests like? Are you a competitive person by nature?
I'm a competitive person in that I like to do the best for myself. Well, you want to win. But in those days, there weren't a lot of ladies. It would probably be one heat of 6 women in a final. If you see what the first contest, there would be about 6 or 8. There might be 2 heats, usually maybe 1. And then it, of course, grew and grew and grew, which was good. But in the early days, there weren't a lot of ladies because, to be fair, you would probably have to have a car to travel. I mean, that was my first project, was to learn to drive so I could be independent. I saved up to have a car, and so I could, carry my own surfboard. But perhaps a lot of girls didn't have that, because to get to a beach, in Cornwall, you've got to have a car, unless you live right by it. Because I don't actually live by the sea. I live inland near Truro.
And you devoted quite a lot of your adult life to caring for your mother.
Well, to be fair, she cared a lot for me. I mean, it went both ways, but until the end, about 3 years at the end, she failed, and unfortunately, you get this sort of memory loss. She wasn't too bad, but that's life, isn't it? But to be fair, she cared for me, and I cared for her. So that's the way it was, sort of thing. And my brother's been very good. He's very good. He's married. He's got children and grandchildren, and they're always been very good to me. He always rings me up every night, so I can't grumble.
You're often known, or often considered, the first stand-up female surfer in the UK.
I wouldn't like to say I was the first I was saying to Sally, I would like to say that. I don't know what was happening in Wales, Scotland, Jersey, because Jersey was a surfing. I don't know what was happening down here in St Ives. I was mainly based in Newquay. It could have been people in Bude or whatever. I don't know. I mean, you just didn't meet a lot of other people. I'm sure there were other ladies surfing. I can't say that, really.
I was curious to ask you about another standout shiro, as I like to call women like yourself who have pioneered in the sport of surfing, and that's Princess Kailani from Hawaii. She traveled to England in the 1890s.
Yeah.
Do you know anything of the lore of her time there, and if she ended up surfing
but Sally
in the Atlantic?
does, don't you? Because Sally's done investigation on all this stuff. Yes, Sally does.
Sally, jump in with us.
I think the British Museum of Surfing did some research and have some information. They believe that she did go out and use a stand-up board, but I'm not sure how, whether they've got factual sort of proof of that. But I think there was a letter. But I certainly think it's true to say that Gwyn was the first lady in the UK to win and even to start the UK competitions.
Yes, that's right. My first competition was with the men because there was no ladies in it. So I entered it. I came third I didn't progress, but I went in it really to learn from the other surfers and to see how I could compare. As I say, I came about third in my heat, and that was about it, really, third out of four. But they gave me a little pendant because I was the only lady surfer. So that was my first competition. And then they have competitions for ladies because there were more. There was a Sarah Newlin. In fact, you might know her because her brother was Mike Newlin, Tigger Newlin. That they now live in Australia. And Sarah moved out there, but I think, unfortunately, she died about a couple of years ago. She was called Sarah, but I think her maiden married name was Mac something. But do you know Mike Newlin or Tigger Newlin at all? No, they were British people that went out to Australia. I think Mike Newlin did quite well in some of the contests. But Sarah Newlin was one of the early surfers, but they moved out to Australia.
Did it strike you as a particularly radical thing to be doing, surfing as a young woman in the late 60s in the world that you were growing up in?
Well, I don't know whether it was radical. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. So I did what I enjoyed. And as I say, having an older brother, what he did, I did. And the people around me on the beach, the lifeguards knew us as a family. They were always encouraging and helpful. So I didn't see anything out of the normal, really. I just wanted to do it, and that's why I had the opportunity to do it, and that's why I started doing it, really. It's just this, surfing is lovely, whatever form you do, whether it's belly boarding or stand-up or whatever. Any form of... If you catch a wave, it's a thrill, isn't it? Whatever, even if it's a lilo.
It's It's the best. It's the best. I mean, it has captured my heart and my love for the last 20 years already, and I hope that I get to keep surfing for as long as you have been, and longer.
Well, as I say, I've slowed up, but I still paddle out and if I get one nice ride, I'm happy. It's the paddling out now. I a couple of feet offshore is just nice. If it's bigger, it's a struggle to get out, really. But you just do things within your limitations. And I go in about 3 or 4 times a week.
Do you do anything to keep up your fitness outside of the water?
I play tennis. I belong to the Trode Tennis Club. I was down there playing last night. That helps me. I used to do fencing, but that stopped with the virus, and I haven't gone back to that. I may go back to it. I don't know. Fencing, foils and sabre and that sort of thing. And I do a lot of gardening because I got to upkeep the garden and the property. You've got to do painting and stuff like that. So there's always things to do.
There was a talented Californian surfer by the name of Rosemary Reimers Rice, who I've read spoke about the importance of, quote, carrying your own surfboards. You've also spoken about this.
Yes.
And it feels like a kind of metaphor for women trusting in their own strength at a time when maybe that wasn't necessarily encouraged, for women to be powerful in their physical bodies. I was wondering if you could speak to that.
I'm an independent person, and I feel if you can't carry your surfboard, there's no point in... In fact, my latest surfboard, which was made specially for me, they wanted it this wide and that. So I said, no, I want it a bit thinner because I can't get my arm around it. So what's the point? What's the point if I can't carry the surfboard down? I wanted it, I could carry it and lighter, because I couldn't now carry my my original board was 10 feet, which my brother's got actually, and heavy. I don't think I could lift it up now. So
Wow.
What's the point of not being able to carry your surfboard? Because usually now I go with my friend and we go about 7 o'clock in the morning, to avoid crowds and stuff like that. So you've got to carry your own surfboard. There's no point in... That's my philosophy,
Yeah, I'm right there with you. A lot of us struggle to find a balance between a rich surfing life and the responsibilities and obligations of being an adult. How have you navigated that balance?
Well, as I say, I'm not been married and I haven't had children, so I haven't had that responsibility. But I did work. I worked for the Cornwall Council to earn my living and I got a pension from it. So I worked there for 46 years as just a shorthand typist clerk. So I was really a 9-to-5 person. So I wasn't really one of these surfers in the surfing industry. I always called myself what I call amateur weekend surfer, or even, go in the evenings. I'm not one of these people who worked in the industry, would go in every day and sort of lived, some surfers just absolutely live their surfing, which I do slightly, but there's other things in life. I like to play tennis, and you do have certain other responsibilities.
Apologies for interrupting the conversation, but we'd like to take a moment to recognize the generous folks who help make this podcast possible. Sunbutter Skincare is committed to protecting people and the planet. They make vegan, reef-safe SPF 50 sunscreen packaged in reusable and recyclable tins. They're also the world's first certified palm oil-free sunscreen brand. Check out sunbutter.com.au to learn more about their skin and ocean-friendly lines of sunscreen, surf zinc, and skincare. Sanuk has been advocating for a more playful and inclusive surfing culture for more than 2 decades, while crafting some of the comfiest footwear around. Thanks, Sanuk, for your support and for encouraging water people around the globe to protect their happy places. Learn more about Sanuk's partnership with the Surfrider Foundation at sanuk.com. Thanks also to Gary McNeil Concepts, who make cosmic surfboards for cosmic people. Gaz's boards combine recycled and plant-based materials that are built to last without sacrificing performance. To learn more, head to GaryMcNeilConcepts.com. Was it an overt, and this may be a bit too forward, please excuse my manners if it is, was it an overt decision for you to sidestep traditional family marriage life?
I think I'm too independent, really. I don't... I wouldn't wish that on any sort of man, really. I think it's just the way you are. I mean, some people say, oh, you've got to get married or whatever to be happy. Well, I'm one of these people, I'm happy not being married. And that's everybody's different, aren't they? I mean, I like to socialise, and I think I've always preferred actually men's company to ladies' company. It's just... the way I think I'm too independent to have got married, to be honest.
How wonderful. I love that about you.
And as I say, I worked for the council for 46 years, and people say, oh, what are you going to do are you going to do volunteers work and all that sort of thing? Well, I'm now enjoying my surfing more. Now I'm retired because I haven't got the commitment of work. I can go... when I want to, although, as I say, I'm getting older and I'm limited, but I can enjoy the water more. I haven't got to worry about rushing back for work or whatever. So in some ways, some people can look forward to retirement. If they keep fit in retirement, I found it more enjoyable now than in some ways before. That sounds a bit dark, doesn't it?
No, that sounds hopeful to me.
What I was going to say, talking about women's portrayal, I had a German company that came over called Dorothy from Berlin, and she did a film called Chicks on Boards. I don't know if you've seen that. She did a very good film about 5 surfers from different countries and conveying that business of what women have to go through, like in India, South Africa, the Gaza Strip. So I don't know if you've seen that one. She did a very good job, actually, because we were discussing this about the media and how some of them aren't very good. You know, they got no idea of surfing, and, you know, you explain, I want to go at a certain time because of the tides, etc. They haven't got any idea, but they were very good. And she was spent about 3 days over here in Newquay. But she did a portrayal of other surfers from South Africa, India, and a Hawaiian lady who's quite famous, but I've forgotten. So you might want to look that one up.
Fantastic. Do you have any temptation for exploring warmer waters?
Well, I'm a home bird, really. To be fair, I've got no indication. I never wanted to go to Australia. It's a long way. You've got a lot of alligators and water snakes and jellyfish and sharks and things like that. So it's really put me off. It's a long way to go. So I've never really. I'm sure it's a lovely country. I think I would prefer, I mean, a lot of people like going to New Zealand, but I think I would prefer to go to Australia than New Zealand, actually. But I don't think I'll ever get there. It's a long way.
You've been to Ireland a lot?
Yeah, I've been to Northern Ireland, and I've surfed at Portugal, Biarritz area. That's very nice, the Biarritz area. So that's the only places I've been to. I've been to America, but not surfed there at all. When I was there, we went down the coastline. It looked very nice, Malibu, but I wasn't that impressed with the beaches, actually. I thought our beaches and your beaches are much nicer. Have you been to California?
I'm actually from Florida.
Well, I didn't go there, so I can't say anything about Florida.
That's all right. You're not missing much. It's warm. It is very warm. I'll give it that.
The only thing about Florida is that Kelly Slater comes from there, and that I'm a great admirer of Kelly Slater.
Me too. Who else? Which other surfing greats have captured your interest?
The lady's influential was a lady called Margot Godfrey. I don't know if she's called that now. And she was in surfing magazines. I think she's still... she was really my lady influence, I think. But men-wise, it was people on the beach. I suppose it would be Corky Carroll around that time, those sort of people. But it's mainly the surfers on Newquay Beach and a chap called Rodney Sumter. He came from Britain to Australia, back here again. He was the first professional surfer over here. He was very, very good. He was, I think, third in the world, and I think at one time friends with Nat Young one time, but I don't know if they are now. We were talking about internal politics of surfing that comes into it, doesn't it?
Rodney Sumter was in Endless Summer, wasn't he?
Yeah. In any sport, you get internal politics, don't you?
You sure do. Can be quite humorous, I think.
I mean, if I go in the water, I tend to try and go away from people. You know, you can see the breakers working, but do you want to be trying to get mixed up? You know, I'd rather go back down to, even if it's the wave is worse, I'd rather go away from people than try to compete on the best peak, if you see what I mean.
Yep, I can relate to that strategy, absolutely. Gwyn, are you in your 6th decade of surfing? 5th decade of surfing?
Well, I'm now 76.
Can you hear me?
I'm now 76. So I started surfing with the belly boards in the 1950s, and I started the Malibu or stand-up surfing in 1965.
Have you, over that time, over those decades, have you noticed any particular strengths or weaknesses that surfers tend to have in life on land or in the water?
I suppose the strength is the surfing community do come together if there's a problem or like a death or something like that. Weaknesses, that's difficult. I don't really notice. As I say, I do my own thing. I don't really notice what other people are doing, if you see what I mean. But I think the surfing community do come together and like to speak to each other, don't they?
Definitely. Yeah, it's been a rich source of friendship and just a global community.
International wise, yes. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
What have been the biggest changes for you in surf culture
that you've witnessed?
Well, I think there's definitely more women. I mean, when I go in the water, there's sometimes more women than men. Definitely more lady surfers have come into the sport.
How do you feel about being responsible for many of us wanting to start surfing? How does that land for you?
Well, it's nice to see that I like to see people enjoy themselves. That's what to me surfing is about, is enjoyment. And well, of course, the difference is the technology of it all. I mean, when I first started, we didn't have wetsuits. It was just a swimsuit. That's what we had, just a swimsuit. And
were you wearing woolly jumpers in winter?
Yeah, in the autumn, you put a woolly jumper on, and then, I mean, obviously the winter, well, for me it was cold. And then somebody decided to start to make wetsuits. That's how my first wetsuit actually was a diving suit, which sit up at the front. So that was my first suit to keep me warm in the winter. And then the technology's improved all the time. Even with wetsuits, that's improving, isn't it? They're more lighter and flexible. And as I say, I now wear a helmet. I wear a helmet in the water, that sort of thing. When I first started, there was no leashes. You just went in with your surfboard. You didn't have a leash. And then it came compulsory. You were in a contest to wear a leash. But we had no leashes. You just learnt to hold on to your surfboard. Or that's another thing I say to people. They say about how do I start surfing? I say, well, the first thing is, can you swim? Because if you come off your surfboard and you can't swim, there's no point, is there? I think a lot of people go in the water and they can't swim properly. You've got to be prepared for different...
Speaking of technology, I heard you mention you were interested in surfing at the wave pool nearby to you. Did you end up doing that? I listened to a podcast.
That's near Bristol, yes. No, I haven't managed to do that. No. The virus has hit a lot of things, really. Although they have opened, and it's just another journey. Although it's not far from where my brother lives, and my nephew's been on it. But perhaps one day I'll get to it, but I haven't up to now.
What do you see as the greatest success of your life thus far?
Well, I managed to live as long as I think I'd be happy. I mean, that's the thing, is to keep happy. I mean, with this virus, a lot of people said, oh, it brought them down. But I've been lucky. I lived in a nice area and I was able to walk or cycle around my area. So I've been very lucky, really.
You'd like to explain about your surfing during COVID.
Oh, yes, that's right. I took my surfboard out in the garden and did exercises, put it on a chair and sort of did paddling exercises and things like that. Because I know people were surfing in Newquay, and so I expect some people even travel, but I didn't. I kept to the rules and kept home, and like most people did. So I just put a surfboard in the garden and, practiced paddling and standing up and exercises. But when I got back to it, you do lose your energy or your how to do it. I was surprised, really, how I had to get back to it. Doing exercises is not the same as actually doing it. It's a completely different exercise. It does keep you fit, surfing, I think. Definitely.
That's all my questions. We've gotten to the end of them.
Well, it's been lovely to meet you. And you're still out there in the water, obviously. Are you? You're still...
Oh, yes.
Oh, as much as possible. I'm absolutely head over heels.
Where is it you surf mostly?
We live near to Byron Bay, which there are a few beautiful right-hand point breaks nearby that I grew up in Florida, like Kelly Slater, surfing very small, piddly little waves, and so I just cannot get enough of the point breaks in Australia. They're just delicious.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of point breaks, do we? Here, it's all sort of beach breaks. So it's easy to paddle out, I suppose, to these places, isn't it? No, we haven't got that luxury, have we?
Have you been over to England, Lauren?
Only once, and it was before I was surfing much, so I haven't gotten to surf there, but I hope one day to come over and get to share some water time with you both. That would be an absolute privilege and a pleasure.
We get a lot of the Australians this time doing the lifeguarding. I noticed, in fact, I hadn't seen a lot recently, but I noticed there were quite a few in the surf shop the other day, and I say, what are you doing? They say, oh, we're lifeguarding. So obviously they've made the trip over here for the summer, because it's your winter, obviously.
But as you probably know, Tom Wagner ended up being in Newquay because he was on a European tour, and he didn't really know about the British belly boards at all then, or just before he found out about them. So that he was amazed to find out that there was this culture, because I think it's really died out in Australia. But that was a trigger of him being interested in developing the wooden board that was a combination of the Hawaiian and the British ones. But yeah, I think it's a shame it's sort of died out in Australia. It'd be great to hope that it might revive, but it's really reviving here now.
Well, I think the best about the belly board is it's accessible.
Yeah.
It's accessible to most people, easy to carry again.
Or if the waves aren't good, like that's what's happening now.
Well, even if they're good, you've got like people like Alan Stokes, they go out the back with flippers and they really get some good rides with it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I like about belly boards. It's accessible to most people.
Yeah.
If you're elderly, you don't want to go out very far, you just get the little white waterways, but you still get the thrill of surfing in.
Well, and it's very inclusive, so you could maybe get very talented male surfers. I think what I've seen in Cornwall, which is lovely.
Surfers.
Well, what I was saying about the partnership before, and you get very talented ladies surfers, but it's inclusive. I suppose what I was going to say, that in the early days there were very successful male surfers, and the partners felt excluded.
Yeah.
Whereas when they started using the belly boards, it was something that they could do together.
Yes, yeah. That's what I like.
Yeah.
I mean, we noticed in Newquay, very good stand-up surfers now prefer to go out belly boarding. They enjoy it. It's more accessible. They get out the back, and you haven't got, the hassle of carrying your board or sort of being in the crowd of people. You just do your own thing.
Well, it's been a long time coming, I think. So I started sort of jumping up and down about it. It is fantastic to see. There has been a real resurgence, hasn't there, in the last few years.
Definitely cool. Well, and Devon, obviously. I mentioned Devon. Yes. Anyhow, it's been lovely to meet you.
Such a pleasure, such an honor to get to meet you this way. Gwyn, thank you so much.
Yes.
That's all right.
Well, when we're together again, I think it's the technology.
Yes, to me and technology, I can't be bothered with it. I can't be bothered. There's more things to do in life than sit down at a computer.
Absolutely. I was going to say that surfing's been the great love of my life. And has it been similar for you, Gwyn?
Oh, definitely. Oh, lovely, yes. I mean, we're very lucky, aren't we, to be able to appreciate it. It's captive us, and we've been very lucky by it, I think. And I think more people are catching on that it is a lovely sport.
Thanks for listening with us today. If you have a spare moment, please leave us a review or consider sharing an episode with a friend. Both help us to find the very best stories from our global community of water people. This episode was edited by Ben Alexander. The podcast soundtrack was composed by Shannon Sol Carroll, with additional tunes improvised by Dave and goofy-footed legends Neil Purchase Jr. and Christian Barker. We'll be continuing today's conversation on Instagram, where we're at Water People Podcast.